said, well, what next? What do I do? And it wasn't long after that, actually, where I was just doing some browsing on my computer and I came across a biological dentist on YouTube. And she was talking about the risks of dental infection with disease as a whole. So this was interesting. It just kind of caught my eye. You know, I had no clue about any of the dental infections that could cause any type of, you know, illnesses or anything like that. I wasn't even aware of any of that at this point. So it was kind of a huge kind of discovery, and it really kind of hit home. And I'm thinking, maybe I should go talk to her. You know, something deep down said, you know, you go see her. So that's exactly what I did. I made an appointment. I went to go see her, and when the first appointment that I had with her, she told me that you need to bring all your dental x-rays. Anything that you can think of about all the dental work you've had in your entire life, bring it with you. So I did that. I went to my dentist. I started making some phone calls. I said, you know, send me x-rays, whatever you have, I want it. So yeah, and when I went to go see her, she kind of reviewed all that, and I kind of told her about all the experiences I was having, and, you know, with going blind and all the other illness, or the symptoms that I was going through, and all the specialists and doctors that I was already seeing. I kind of filled her in on all that. And her conclusion on this was, you know, after looking at my dental profile, which, you know, I'm not going to go into that right now because we have 3 other videos to kind of show you all that stuff, so I'm not going to talk about that. But basically it came to this. She's like, the dental issues that you have in your mouth can very well be contributing to all the things you're experiencing right now, or at least in a partial way. So that was a huge discovery for me. That was huge. Really got me thinking outside the box. Because every doctor and every specialist that I've ever seen, and I'm even, like, I forgot to mention this before, that one doctor the hematologist doctor that I saw, the blood specialist, when she found that I was having, or she found that I had, my C-reactive protein was high. That puzzled her. She didn't understand why. I'm a young guy, there's no reason for that to happen. So she got together with like 3 or 4 other doctors in the Toronto area, big doctors, like very prestige, they're top of their game basically, right? So they all got together, looked at my case, they looked at all my, all the blood profile and everything else that I've had done. And she basically said to me, she's like, having C-reactive protein that's as high as what you have does not make any sense. The only way you can make any sense, the only way we can make any sense of this is if you're pregnant.
Whoa. I just felt it kick.
So, these are the answers I'm getting from the doctors. So I just started shaking my head. I'm like, is this the best you guys can do? I'm pregnant? I'm a guy. I'm pretty sure I'm not going to be pregnant anytime soon. So that was really one of the things that led me up to this point to where, you know what, I'm going to take control of this myself. I can't go through, I can't keep doing this anymore. So anyway, just kind of getting out, touching on that where I should have touched on that before. But so yeah, so basically I kind of realized that the dental work that we do in our mouths could be contributed to illness. So that kind of got me going down that path. And then I started to read, basically. That's kind of where my newfound passion, that's where the birth of that came from during this time. So I was pretty motivated at this point to kind of keep going because I had a pretty big discovery. I'm like, okay, let's see if I can start dealing with some of this dental work that I have here, and then I'm going to see what else we can find. So basically I kind of started to build my own kind of treatment program at this point, my own kind of personal treatment program. So the biological dentist that I saw, she kind of gave me a few tips, kind of made some changes to my diet. She introduced me to vitamin C, this liposomal Live-On Labs vitamin C that Jesse's already done a good video on that. That's where we discovered that from her. And I started taking that, and oh man, it made a difference, huge difference. So, okay, unlike some of the doctors or specialists I saw before, they're not recommended vitamin C. They're not recommending changing your diet or anything like that. They just want to find a marker in your blood or anything and then give you a drug. No, that's not happening. So I started taking that, and she gave me another herb that kind of helped with kind of different infections, which is an herb called Pau d'Arco. So it was a kind of a tincture form. So I started taking that, and that was kind of a beginning stages of my kind of early treatment program where I started to see some differences. So that was huge. I felt like I was kind of really onto something here. So I kept going. I kept searching. And then soon enough, this led me to find a Lyme doctor, expert in the area. And I didn't know anything about Lyme at the time. So this is where Jessie had already done some previous research on this. So she had worked for a nutraceutical company in the past. So she was in touch with a lot of naturopaths and doctors and different things like that. So she was already kind of researching this, and especially all the things I was going through. So she was already interested in kind of looking at Lyme, and she was already talking to me about this, right? So this was already kind of surfacing itself, especially now that I knew that chronic infection was a big contributor to just illness in general, right? So that was a key moment, which of course led me up to finding a Lyme expert here in the area. So I made an appointment, went to go see him, and at this time, you know, even though I saw the biological dentist and I was starting some treatments in this is when I was at my worst. So everything from, you know, all the cognitive decline and motor function, and, you know, eyes still going in and out of blindness at this point too, that never stopped. And it's just the worst feeling ever. You know, if you're a Lyme sufferer and you want to kind of find a moment where you've kind of hit rock bottom with all your symptoms, that's where I was. So I made an appointment with him. I went to go see him, and I walked into his office, and of course they did all the tests they needed to do to check for Lyme and all the co-infections. So I had that all done and kind of sent away. So this was kind of a follow-up appointment, I guess I'd say. And when he looked at the results, he looked at me right in the eye, and he said, "Kevin, I've been dealing with Lyme patients for over 30 years. And looking at your profile with you do have Lyme, of course, he told me that. And then it wasn't just Lyme, it was all the co-infections, and I'm not going to go over that. You can look at our intro video, it kind of covers a lot of that. But looking at that profile, he said, I'm very surprised to see you walking to my office under your own will. In my experience, most people are rolled into here in wheelchairs at this point with kind of the profile that you have." So that really hit home, and I really kind of felt that, how come I'm still fighting? You know, I'm not giving up. I was never even ever thought of giving up, not once really. I mean, there was times where I was like kind of pissed off at life and, you know, why me and all this. Of course, everybody goes through that, and I did go through that, but never really was a time where I was like, I quit. I'm done. Just surrender. You know, give me the drugs, whatever you need to do, antibiotics, I don't care, just do it. I was never there. So I had my eyes on the prize, I think, the whole time, which is interesting. And I'm going to get back to that at the end of the video here, how key that is. So basically, we figured that out. He did kind of propose a treatment plan now that we went through all this. With him in his office, and he had everything, all the things that you could do, herbs and all kinds of machines and all kinds of various things to, you know, electromedicine and things like that, which was interesting. I never really hugely got into that yet, which is, we're going to talk about that soon, but he basically kind of quoted me $10,000 to $15,000 a year to kind of go through the full treatment program that he was offering. And it may take a year, may take a couple of years before you can get yourself kind of into more of a recovery state. So I heard that, I'm like, man, at this point I'd been all over the place. I was just kind of desperate for some kind of results, and to hear that, you know, another $10,000 to $15,000 a year for a treatment, it's like, man, I can't. So I kind of left that alone. I kind of told him I'll think about it, and just kind of left it at that. So, but at that time, at least I had answers. I knew I had Lyme. And Lyme was not the biggest problem. It usually never is when you look at all the co-infections and all Lyme's friends that come with it. It was all that stuff that I really need to be dealt with. So, but at least I had answers. So when you're back and forth with specialists and getting poked and probbed and, you know, get blood taken and, you know, coming back with, you should be healthy and all this stuff that I went through all of these years up to this point, it was finally that moment where I was like, this is it, you know. This kind of is more the root of the problem. It wasn't the root of the problem. I'm not saying that, because my problems went even deeper than that, which we're going to go to, but at least I had something to go off of here. So I was motivated. I was motivated 100%. And, you know, I had already started to learn and read and do all these things already, but that just accelerated to the next level. I wanted to read and learn about this on every level I could humanly think of. So I started to read about diet, I started to read about herbs, I started to read about Ayurvedic medicine, traditional Chinese medicine. I bought books on Lyme disease from the various doctors. I finally found Dr. Klinghardt, who's one of the experts in Lyme. I watched everything I could ever get my hands on him. And things were starting to kind of make sense. So I kind of just spent a significant amount of time just basically gathering information on every level I could think of. So this kind of was, what was really building in the background was kind of, I was building my own protocol for Lyme on my own. So that's where that kind of led to. So I started to learn a lot about herbs. You know, when you go through Lyme disease, this is basically, now we're kind of going through the recovery process. So basically what we've talked about so far was this time period of, you know, going through the pain and suffering of Lyme and not getting any answers and all the things I had to deal with, you know, that kind of phase which everybody with Lyme goes through. So now I'm kind of at the point to where, okay, I know what I have, or I know what I need to deal with. It's kind of game on. So a lot of it was, I studied a lot of herbs that could help with Lyme. Natural herbs. I didn't want to go antibiotics. Out of all the things I went through with Lyme and all the suffering I had, I never took a single antibiotic. Never.
Look at the camera and tell us what's wrong with you today.
I'm sick.
Sick with what?
I don't know. Apparently I have Lyme disease like you, and we're doing all the Lyme stuff, and I'm really, really sick because we're doing all the herbs to get rid of it, and we're getting worse before we get better. I was going to videotape you when this happened to you, but you refused to allow me to do that, and yours was better because it was actually showing all over your face. Mine is coming out as booger and sore throat and a nasal infection and an ear infection and some type of vaginal infection, itching.
That's nice.
And pain, and I have a headache, and last night I had diarrhea all night long, and I almost vomited.
Sounds good.
Yeah, it's fun. It's lots of fun.
Now again, I don't recommend that to anybody. This is just a choice that I made. I actually put myself probably through a lot more hell than I really could have, because I probably could have got some, at least a little bit of relief, maybe if I got targeted some of the stuff with antibiotics, but I didn't. And that's just the way it was for me. Something told me that this is not, you need to figure this out on your own. That's basically what this whole, this is leading up to here. So I started to kind of take more herbs. So some of the herbs, I got it's kind of a list here that I have here. Cat's claw, I started taking that. Black walnut, licorice, oil of oregano, neem, cryptolepis, teasel, sweet anise, Japanese knotweed. These are all kind of big herbs for Lyme. Andrographis, sarsaparilla, dandelion root, berberine, ashwagandha, astragalus, pau d'arco, which I was already taking, the medicinal mushrooms, shaga, reishi, cordyceps, triphala, which is an Ayurvedic herb, which we'll talk about later. I started kind of building that, and I wasn't all, taking it at the same time, but I was kind of experimenting with that and playing with that. So I kind of bought basically every herb I could get my hands on that, showed promise. So, and then I kind of looked at some of the supplement route. Jessie already in one of her videos, she talked about serapeptase, which is a big anti-inflammatory type of supplement, which I started taking, and it worked really well for me too. Vitamin C, I was popping that Live On Labs vitamin C. I was taking anywhere from, on average of, I'll say 6 to 12. My peak, I've actually taken 16 of those packages, which is 16,000 milligrams of vitamin C in one day. I've done that before. And it's funny, when I was actually losing vision in my eye, that was the only thing that brought it back to life, which is very interesting. So when I would see my eye kind of going and this white fog that I talk about that came in, I'd go to the vitamin C and I'd start pumping packs, and then within an hour or two, my vision would come back. It's very interesting how that was my go-to. So I always made sure I had several boxes of that on hand. Alpha lipoic acid, that's something else. And even Live On Labs, they make a liposomal version of that. It's very, very nice. It's very good. Zinc, I was starting to pop that for, kind of immune support. Probiotics, of course, I was pumping them like crazy. Magnesium, fish oil, high DHA type supplements, I was into that. B complex, trying to get my B vitamins to come in. Chlorella, spirulina, I was starting to introduce some of that too and kind of to my morning shakes and bring that in. Kelp powder as well, some of the sea vegetables, I was starting to get into that. And then the two big ones, like these are the two that I kind of stick to even to this day, is fulvic and humic acid. That supplement, I mean, that had profound results for me. The other one was cannabis oil. Yeah, so back when things were the worst for me, I found somebody that was doing cannabis oil. I bought some. It was the type that wasn't just the high CBD, it had a lot of THC in it. So when I did take it at first, I did get stoned, extremely stoned, and to be quite honest with you, some of the things I was struggling with, this was a blessing to be as stoned as I was. So I just want to mention that. But I started taking that, and that was really helping me. Not just because I was kind of taking my mind away from my misery, but it was actually helping me with kind of pain and my mental issues as well. So it was making a difference. So those were kind of some of the supplements I was kind of experimenting in the early on as well. But I have to say I didn't have the greatest success going that route. It was helping, it was making a difference. Clearly I knew that, kind of nature had some tricks up her sleeve that I needed to investigate more with, right? So I knew that, but some of these herbs are potent. If you have Lyme and you're taking some of these supplements that I just mentioned, you'll know that they can be potent and you will go through some Herxheimer reactions. And I herx like crazy. I'm very sensitive to everything. The littlest herbs that I would take, I would have a reaction. And the more I started taking some of those, the more the Herx reactions got worse and worse and worse. So I just kind of felt like it was almost like I was poisoning myself. These herbs were going in there and kind of doing what they needed to do, but my body couldn't clear out all the debris and aftermath afterwards. This is where we're going to get into kind of the detoxification portion, which is probably one of the most important things if you have Lyme. So my lymphatic system was basically starting to shut down. Things were not moving. The lymphatic system is basically your sewage system inside you. It takes all the garbage out of you, right? So when you're dealing with something like this, you need to make sure that that's working properly. And mine wasn't. That all these herbs and things that I was taking was not. It was really starting to impact that. So that kind of led me into kind of some detox stuff. That's kind of where Jessie and I found Dr. Hulda Clark. So she's got some interesting protocols. She's got a lot of books out there as well. And what she's got is kind of what she calls her master cleanse, which you go through. It kind of cleanses out your kidneys, it cleanses out your liver and gallbladder, it cleanses out your colon.
Okay, babe. So it's 6 o'clock in the morning. Have you gone to the bathroom yet? No, I did. And so far, no stones. We drank that mixture and I've been sick all night. Well, not all night. I'm feeling okay now. Apparently, it neglects to tell you that you could get extremely nauseous and feel quite ill from drinking that mixture. And yeah, I started feeling that way probably at around midnight, and it lasted till 3. But because I have problems with my issues with my liver, I'm assuming that I started having fever and all that because of it. Uh-oh. Looks like Kevin might be ready to go to the bathroom here in about 5 minutes. Well, and then I had to immediately go to the bathroom at 3 o'clock in the morning. Didn't see any stones, but I did see some weird stuff that could possibly be parasites from what I've heard that they're described like, specifically the fluke. I didn't throw up, but I almost did. And we just finished drinking our 3rd round of Epsom salts, which are absolutely disgusting. I don't know how I'm going to do another round of that. Anyway, I'll try to film the next little bit of it. And we'll see what happens. It's, if you could see here, it's 6:12 in the morning, and neither of us can really sleep because we're just dying to get this done. Okay, bye.
And it's kind of one protocol to do all that. It's very invasive. I'm not going to go into the details here. We may do a video on that, but you can look it up online if you're interested in that. But we started to do that. It worked quite well for Jessie. She actually was going through her symptoms and all her stuff at the same time, kind of in parallel with me, of course, right? And some of the herbs and some of the things that I was bringing in, she was starting to try too, and she was kind of feeling some of the same results, you know, or things were kind of getting backed up. So she kind of felt the need to detox too. So she's actually the one that kind of brought this to the table. She kind of found this through the biological dentist that was helping us. She's like, you guys should really consider this, you know, kind of trying to detox yourself. So we started to do some of that. And then I kind of started to make some overall diet changes. I realized that food and nutrition is key to, you know, trying to recover from this illness. You guys all, anybody that's going through this will definitely know that. So I started to kind of look at that and study that. And basically for me, and kind of what kind of worked for me, I kind of went into more of a very little meat. I ate a little bit, but it was more kind of the raw vegetarian type at the beginning, which seemed to help. Like, you know, the raw vegetables and stuff like that for me, it works for me.
Lahora. Organic cuisine. Okay, going in.
I kind of started to focus on a little bit more higher, you know, good fats, higher with DHA, that type of stuff. So I started to get into, you know, a little bit more seafood, you know, instead of some of the meats I was eating.
Here's Kevin making mussels. So excited.
Oysters especially. I was eating a lot of oysters at this time because I knew oysters, you know, are probably one of the best foods there are out there for DHA and iodine, right? So I started to eat a lot of these foods. I started to ferment my own foods. I read the GAPS diet, I read the Body Ecology diet, the SCD diet, I read all of them, and then I kind of from that I started to learn how to, you know, make my own fermented foods. So fermented vegetables was kind of a common thing for us. So we started to eat these on a regular basis. Lots of sea vegetables, you know, kelp and dulse and things like that we were starting to bring in too as well. I juice daily, you know, that was my morning thing. You know, I get whatever, you know, kind of apple, cucumber, kale, lemon, that type of stuff in the morning. And sometimes I would have beet juice in the morning too to kind of help with detoxification. So I started to do a lot of that. But at the same time, I would load all kinds of superfoods in there. You know, so I put some spirulina in there, I put some chlorella in there, you know, I put some maca root in there, I put some whatever other type of herbs I was using at the time too, you know, some ashwagandha or some astragalus or anything like that. I was really starting to experiment with that too. And also with my diet, we were big on this when we started the SCD diet, but you know, all the GMOs we basically eliminated from everything. We were very cautious on that. We weren't eating any dairy products, any grains at all, maybe a little bit of rice or something like that, but we basically cut everything out. Of course, sugar, you know, any processed sugar, that was gone. Soy, we didn't eat any soy, anything like that, so that was all gone. And kind of just basically looking at kind of more nutrient-dense food. You know, I started to get into kind of, you know, a lot of the superfoods and stuff like that too, and reading about that, and started to play around with that to kind of bring my, you know, kind of upbring my nutritional profile a little bit too, right? So basically, we get into the kind of the detoxification stage here. So at this point, you know, everything was kind of starting to back up and kind of shut down on me. So I really needed to kind of find a way to better detox. You know, I was going through some gallbladder and, you know, liver cleanses like I talked about with Hulda Clark, but didn't really have a huge effect on me. So I kind of wanted to look a little bit more into that. So I got some more tests done as well, and I kind of looked at heavy metals as well. So what came back is that, you know, of course, with all the dental work and all the amalgams I had, I came back very high with mercury, lead, nickel. Those were the three big ones. So I knew I had a heavy metal problem as well with all this other Lyme and infection going on there too. So I had to deal with that. So some of the detox methods I started to look at and started to try, I started to experiment with some things. I went out and I did some colonics. If you've never done one of those, basically you sit on a little table there and they shove this kind of big tube up your, you know, your behind. So they kind of shove that up there and they kind of blast all kinds of, you know, water, basically, kind of purified, you know, clean water to kind of go up and basically bring all the debris that's kind of, you know, all around your colon, basically kind of flush that out of you. So I tried that. I tried several treatments on that, which helped a little bit. I tried coffee enemas. So basically you put coffee up the rectum as well, and you let it sit there for, you know, as many minutes as you can, and then you basically release it. So the coffee kind of stimulates your colon to basically kind of dump all kinds of stuff from the liver. Basically just, it kind of just opens up the floodgates there to basically just start, you know, releasing a lot of this stuff. So I started doing that. I was even doing some infrared sauna treatments. I found a little clinic there, and I kind of stopped 2-3 times a week on my way home from work, and I did some sweating, some deep sweating, which really helped as well. And I was doing some other kind of focusing on some other specific herbs to kind of help with detoxification as well. But one of my favorites out of all that was bentonite clay. Now I think probably we'll do a whole video on bentonite clay. I think that's a powerful one. It's a clay, and it's like a magnet. It just sucks toxins. It does a very good job of that. So you drink it, you take it in orally, and it's good for heavy metals. It's good for all kinds of things. So that's something I was doing on a daily basis as well, which was helping. And as far as herbs and supplements, I was doing kind of chlorella to kind of bring in, you know, kind of get rid of some of the, it's supposed to be good for heavy metals. So I started doing some of that. Some alpha lipoic acid is supposed to be good to kind of stimulate that. Glutathione, kind of getting into that as well. Some dandelion root, things like that to kind of, you know, stimulate some detoxification in me. So I was working with that as well. So as things progressed, you know, I was starting to see some changes happen. So I wanted to keep going. I started to make some more changes. So I started to kind of focus in a little more on the Ayurvedic medicine. This is kind of the India philosophy on medicine, and it's interesting. So I started to play with that a little bit too, and I kind of found out based on when you look at the doshas is what they call it within the body. Basically what they are as far as the Ayurvedic philosophy is that the 3 doshas are kind of dynamic energies that are constantly in flux with each other, and they should be 100% in balance. That's the key. If anything goes out of balance between one of these 3, this is kind of what brings the very foundation for the disease to come in. So, which is interesting. And these 3 doshas, what they kind of do is they're kind of inner constituents inside the physical body, and what they do is they provide the connection basically to the cosmos. Yeah, it's interesting. So I started to look at that, and I kind of did some testing on that. What I found was I was very high Pitta. So the Pitta dosha, which is basically the element of fire. So when you look at the kind of Ayurvedic tradition and a lot of the other traditions out there, they always talk about the 5 elements. So you got kind of the earth, air, water, fire, and ether or space. They always talk about these 5, and they all need to be kind of in perfect balance with each other. And they're always in constant flux with each other. They're always changing in this beautiful dance that's happening. So keeping them in balance is key. So when your fire element kind of comes out of balance, this kind of brings upon this high Pitta dosha that comes into play, which if you look at that and kind of study that, which I did, it's very interesting. So some of the qualities kind of reflecting that is basically basically a body on fire. So when you're dealing with Lyme disease and you're dealing with serious chronic infection, your body's completely inflamed, there's inflammation is just taken over. So this brings about this body on fire. So this made sense to me. I'm like, okay, I got to keep looking into this a little bit more. So some of the symptoms I found with high Pitta, which really nailed down Lyme disease in a big way too. At the body level, you got problems with the blood, you've got problems with digestion, and you got problems with the skin. These are all 3 key areas within the body that kind of represent this kind of high Pitta dosha. So I was experiencing all of it. I had problems with my blood, my skin was going crazy, and my digestion was going all over the place. So, okay, I started to look at that. And really what I'm kind of discovering is that it's really a common thing with a lot of people struggling with chronic infection, like Lyme. So it's something to really consider, guys, if you're really looking at kind of, going outside the box a little bit on this. So some of the balancing tips that I found with that is, of course, the Pitta diet. There's a lot of foods that are kind of cooling foods that you need to focus on rather than these hot, flamey, fiery foods. So you really got to be careful with that. So I started to look at that. And of course, the 2 big things that throw this thing way off is coffee or caffeine and alcohol. Those 2 just throw it through the roof. And I notice that every time I drink coffee, I don't drink much coffee or really at all anymore. I don't think coffee is really helpful for anybody, to be honest with you. And the same thing with alcohol. A lot of people that are struggling with infection or chronic illness, if you go out and have a drink or maybe a wine or something, you're thinking you want to experiment a little bit, you'll probably be regretting that for several days. It's because of that. Those things just throw that system way out of balance. So, and this is kind of where I got into kind of some of the Ayurvedic herbs. One of the best herbs to kind of balance the doshas is basically Triphala. So Triphala brings all three of them kind of back into harmony with each other. Seems to be the most popular Ayurvedic herb there is, really one of them anyway. So I started taking that. I've been taking that for years, and it's really helped kind of calm the storm, right? So, you know, if you're looking at battling Lyme and kind of taking control of this yourself, you really got to go outside the box and look at all these little details. Every little detail matters. It's not just going down one route and, you know, take some antibiotics and, you know, hopefully you're going to get better. There's a lot of deeper things here that we need to look at. So, or at least I looked at them anyway. So I kind of made some changes on that route and kind of looked at that, and it's also important to note by this time, you know, from where I kind of met this biological dentist to that this point, you know, there's a few years in between here that I started to do a lot of this dental treatment, which if you look at my other videos, you'll see what I did. So a lot of this was already happening at this time too. So it's kind of, a lot of things were going on, a lot of things. Also during this time too, that the biological dentist that I was seeing, she had her own little clinic there, and we were doing intravenous vitamin C. I was doing ozone treatments, and we were doing Rife treatments. All three of them. Even Jess and I were going together. We'd meet, you know, two, three times a week. We'd kind of, both of us would go meet there. We'd sit in. One of us would do one treatment. I would do the other, or maybe a combination of all of them. And we started doing that, and that went on for well over a year. Might even be a couple years actually that we did that. We spent a lot of time in these clinics doing a lot of these treatments because we were so sick. So I was doing that along with the dental and along with my, you know, changing diet, and I was doing all kinds of things. It's kind of crazy to look back on it. I was doing so much, and I continued to do all this stuff, this is one of the most important things that I can kind of bring up during this talk right now, is that out of all the things that I was doing and how much I was struggling, I never missed a day of work. I somehow found a way to keep going to work, you know, and I had to do it in a way, you know, I'm a manager, I have a lot of people that report to me, I got a pretty, you know, demanding job, let's say, and it was hard for me to kind of keep things together. You know, I did it in a way where nobody at work knew. Nobody really knew what I was going through. I think some of them saw that, you know, okay, Kevin's something's going on there, but nothing really came out of that. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's partially why Jesse and I were going to this clinic and doing all these treatments. That was the only way I could go to work. You know, 2-3 times a week I'd have to go there and get 25,000 milligrams of vitamin C pumped into me on the one day. And then a couple days later I'd go do some ozone. I did this every week because it was the only way I could function. So it was tough. But like I said, going through it with Jesse, even though it's kind of crazy to say this, but you know, when you're going through something like this, it's kind of nice to have somebody come with you. And I hate to say that, you know, I'm kind of happy that she struggled too, but I guess I don't. But it's just the two of us kind of battled this and walked this pathway ourselves, because what I'm talking about here, she was doing the same things. So she was experimenting and doing all these things and reading in her own way. So we were always kind of exchanging information and trying to do different things. Like we were crazy. It was just, we were trying everything we could get our hands on. So as all of that was happening, you know, I was starting to see some results. I wasn't, you know, I was still just not that well. And then it was one morning that we woke up, I think it was a weekend, and I got up first and Jessie got up after, and she came over and she was all excited. She had to tell me, you know, she had this dream. She's like, Kevin, I had this dream, so vivid last night. And of course, one thing about Jessie that we'll say too, that she's always been a little more, you know, kind of intuitive and kind of in touch with that side of things, let's say. But yeah, she had this dream, and it was all about light therapy. So everything in her dream she saw everywhere was just light therapy, light therapy, light therapy, light. Everything was all about light. So she kind of felt when she got up she had to tell me about this. So that was interesting. So we kind of looked at that. It's like, why would you have that? Like, what's the meaning? What's the, what's the message? So I'm an electrical engineer. That's what I do for a living, right? I'm a very highly technical guy, and kind of an avid scientist and physicist now in my spare time. So, but before, this was, a few years ago now, I didn't really know anything about light, which was interesting. When you look at light, which is, we'll get a little more into that later, it's just, everything's light. Your body, you are a light body. Everything that you see outside, it's all light. So to think that maybe light could have something to do with helping me was kind of a aha moment. I'm like, okay, I gotta look at this. And of course, I'd already read about herbs and diet, and that's kind of where this direction changes. Like, okay, now I'm more into the physics realm and looking into the deeper sense of what light really is and how it could help me.